Hello, everyone. My name is Criezis, and welcome to the next installment of NielsenIQ's Founders Series. This new video series will dive into the many facets of launching a CPG brand, from perfecting the formulation to securing a meeting with retailers, from getting on a retailer's shelf to scaling your business. Each episode will shine a light on the challenges and successes of startup CPG brands. Joining me today to share their story as CPG founders, Joe and Serenity, creators of Serenity Kids. Welcome, Joe and Serenity.
Hi, good to be here.
So glad to have you guys here. As I was mentioning, I've got a personal connection with my daughter, my two daughters, with your brand. But let's dive right in. Let's have some fun. So tell me about this story of this brand. How did you guys come up with the concept? How did you create Serenity Brands?
Well, I was a sick little kid and I took antibiotics all the time and I ate a lot of garbage. And it kind of caught up with me in my 30s with a lot of stomach pain and digestive issues, reflux, right? And my dad was always a health food nut, following the latest trends. And I called him and I was like, Dad, I'm having this health problem. What do I do? And he said, you should try changing your diet. And I'm like, what? Never occurred to me to try to change my diet. I just thought different medicines were what I needed to do to be healthy. And I was desperate, so I changed it and it worked. And that was 12 years ago. So food has been a huge part of my health journey. I don't have to take all those medicines. I take supplements instead, right? And eat healthy, eat clean foods. Mostly, at first it was sort of a paleo style diet, right? So it's a lot of clean meats. It is organic veggies, some fruits and some nuts and really healthy fats. And so food was is a huge part of my daily life. Imagine cooking all of that stuff. You can't go to restaurants to eat all that, right? And there's more and more CPG brands that are getting that way, but it's a lot of my time. And so it's a big part of my thinking, and it has been for a long time.
So when we started planning to have a baby, the first thought was baby food. Like, what are we gonna feed this kid so they don't grow up sick? Because I also had a lot of health issues as well, and had to change my diet also. So food being really important, we looked at the baby foods out there. They were all terrible. They were all full of sugar and grain, both things that we found to be very inflammatory to us. And through Serenity's research, determined were not what's ideal for babies. And we went into the kitchen, created a different kind of baby food, focused on the most nutrient dense, low sugar ingredient possible. So pasture-raised meats, organic vegetables, healthy fats, and really created recipes that mimic nature's perfect baby food, which is breast milk. And so really looking at that even fat to carb ratio with protein and animal products like breast milk to make these really great tasting, nutrient dense baby food purees and snacks.
So we started out with pouches. That was our first one. We made it in our kitchen. We could drive it around town and get our friends' babies to taste it. And I'll never forget the first baby who tried it. My friend sent me a picture of her kid holding our little Amazon. We filled this pouch by hand, got these little pouches. And she sent me a picture of him drinking out of it. And she said, I gave it to him. He sucked it down and wouldn't give it back. He's been putting the pouch the rest of the day. And I love it. Okay, these babies know what's up. They know that healthy meats and healthy fats and healthy vegetables are the way to go. And because I was worried, I thought, well, if it's not on the shelf right now, maybe it's because babies won't eat it. But that was not the case. Not how we learned that fact, which was a relief.
Yeah. Babies know the quality. I've had the same experience with our daughter. Well, that's great. So I love the, one, it comes from both of you internally, it was an experience you had growing up, wanting to have a healthier, diet, and then family planning, right? And starting to see that there wasn't something in the marketplace. Now, as you brought that forward, you started to engage with some friends, family, they loved it. You're like, all right, I've got maybe a hit here. What did you do next? How did you take the next step to really kind of build out manufacturing? How did you get it out into the market?
Yeah, we wanted to match the current format of the other products, right? We wanted to make it easy for parents to find us. We wanted to be on the baby food aisle in the pouch format, just like all the other baby foods. So really what we did was we looked on the shelf and found a brand name of the pouch manufacturer.
Joe did this research.
And called the pouch people. I just found them online, called them and said, this is the kind of product we want to make. Can you make these pouches? Who could fill them? And then they sent me a list of factories who could fill them. So then I just started calling factories and found a very small one that was willing to most of them had really large order minimums or were already had exclusives with other baby foods. So but I found one little one that was willing to work with us and do smaller runs. So we worked with them to R&D the product to get it ready for manufacture, and had a sample product that then we brought to investors. So we ended up raising money prior to launch because we had to co-pack like the shelf stable meat in a pouch.
Yeah.
Complicated manufacturing, cannot make that in our kitchen.
And it's about $250,000 run.
So so needed a lot of money to get to launch. So, but investors like to see some kind of proof of concept. So we had a brand, we had a website, and we had a little brand video, and we had a sample product and a co-packer ready to make it. All we needed was funding. So we used that to raise money from friends and family, investors, some angel investors, and then worked with that little co-packer. That factory ended up not ever being able to make our product. So we had to actually graduate to one of the bigger ones. But by that time, we'd done enough brand building and enough research that the bigger factory was willing to take a little more risk on us.
And we hired an ops person.
Right. We brought in
a consultant
ops
who knew how to talk the talk, right? That we didn't know how to talk.
Yep. So always, whenever doubt, we would lean on experts, whether as employees or advisors. So asking for help lots and lots of times, and just continuing to ask for what we wanted, continuing to not take no for an answer, and eventually got an agreement with that factory. They had some challenges making it too. It was a hard product to make, but we finally got it out, and the product's launched on the same day our baby was born.
Wow. Were you timing that, Serenity?
No, not. We tried to have the products come out way sooner than the baby.
Yeah.
But then I was like, you know what? I just don't want to wait anymore. And I remember I was in labor, and Joe was over there on his phone, and I was like, what is he doing? And then I looked at the clock, and I was like, is that 7 a.m.? I think it is. That means our product's launch in like an hour or two.
That's amazing.
It was crazy, magical.
That's an amazing story. I could just imagine that scene in the hospital where you're like, I'm about to choke you, but actually it's a good thing.
That's right.
So meant to be in so many ways. So I love the advice here about pulling in experts at the right time. I think that's key, is kind of knowing your lack of capability in certain areas and knowing when to pull in to help you. So as you built up, it sounds like you had investment. You started to get the manufacturing underway. How did you approach retail? How did you get kind of the first retailers to take a bite into your brand?
Mm-hmm. Through that whole time of the manufacturing challenges, I'd been talking to retailers because we were 2 months from launch for about a year and a half. Yes. So I was constantly, we're almost ready to launch. So I was building those relationships, including Whole Foods. We had sent product to every
10 times,
regional buyer.
times.
We're in Austin, so we brought sample products to Whole Foods a bunch of times. We'd met with, store level managers, and we just had pinged Whole Foods in every way we could because we knew they were going to be a key partner. And so really, our first actual store was a baby store in Austin. Our friend ran, called Enlightened Baby.
It's a great store.
So great little store, first store ever. And then they launched the same time we launched online in August of 2018. And then a Whole Foods buyer called my cell phone a couple months later and said, hey, this is the buyer at Whole Foods, and we have an empty spot we need to fill in February.
An innovation spot.
Can you give us 5 products to launch in February in all stores nationwide? I was like, I have no idea how to do that, but yes, we do that. We'd already started developing other products. And so we raised more money. We used the opportunity to raise additional capital, and then invested in a few more staff, and, amped up production and made that launch. And what went from one little baby store to 450 Whole Foods stores overnight in February 2019. That drove us into UNFI distribution nationally. Yep. So hired an outsourced sales team called FDM that's still with us, still a very key partner, who took the distribution in UNFI and drove additional retailers. So we were at over 2,000 stores by the end of 2019. And as of today, we're at over 10,000 stores. So it's been a rapid retail growth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So it's a rocket ship right there. That's not every brand has an experience, but I think you've got something unique there with the product, with the loyalty as well. We've seen some incredible loyalty data from your brand. So there's that repetition. Now, obviously, everything isn't always rosy. So what were some of the bigger challenges that you faced?
So we were double the price point of the next most expensive baby food. There was this $2 price ceiling on the aisle. Nobody would charge more than $1.99, and we came out at $3. And so early on, we didn't have any data, we didn't have any selling story. All we had was the fact that people want pasture-raised, good sourced meats, people want better fats, people want lower sugar. That doesn't exist on the baby aisle. It's doing great in the rest of the store. So we really use data from the rest of the store to say, hey, look, if this is selling everywhere else, you can bet that people want this for their baby and that they're willing to pay more. And so we just really found retailers like Whole Foods that were willing to lean into that. We're very lucky to have a Whole Foods buyer that was a little more progressive than some others. They're willing to take a risk. But once we got that Whole Foods placement, then we used the sales data from Whole Foods to drive a selling story to the rest of the marketplace to say, hey, people want this. We're selling it well online. It's selling well in Whole Foods. It'll sell well here too. Starting in natural. Our huge target was natural and small parts of conventional that were like the right conventional stores. So we started with certain segment of Hy-Vee stores really early. Harris Teeter was on board pretty early. We got Wegmans pretty early. So those natural leaning conventional stores, really building out a selling story in natural, and then using that to drive conventional retail, which totally worked. Like now we're in Walmart and Target and Kroger, and we're still among the top selling brands of all those retailers.
Yeah, so that's fantastic, and good to see that kind of progression. And then obviously some of the challenges they have along the way. So you hit on something really unique here about, I talked to a lot of brands about this. Sometimes they're creating a new category, or there isn't, like you said, data on your niche or your price point, but leveraging other categories that are similar or that can, shed light on what could happen or will happen with your brand helps tell that story to investors. So I think that's just a great piece of advice. Building on that point of data, tell me a little bit how you've used data going forward now that you're a bit more established. How are you using data to fuel your story or any insights you're gaining from it?
Yeah, data has been a huge part of our growth. It's one thing to be the top selling brand. It's another thing to be able to show that you're the top selling brand.
Yeah.
Because so we created this really awesome velocity to growth matrix where we plotted all the baby food brands on this XY axis of growth and velocity. And we're over here, top velocity, top growth. All the mainstream brands are like here, very little growth, very low velocities. A couple other challenger brands were strong growth and velocities, but not as big as us. So it really just was able for us to create this space to sales ratio argument to say, like, look, you're over indexed in most of your baby foods. Like, products do not perform as well as how much space you're giving them. We way overperform for the space you're giving us. So it makes a lot of sense to cut these brands. We were very frank about telling them which brands they should cut. We're like, you should bring these products in and take away these products. And as we've grown, we've gotten really sophisticated on which products and which stores, how many, what mix, really based on what that store is selling in their category data, as well as what we know sells in stores like them. And having that really targeted approach, like telling them exactly what to do, made it really easy for them to trust us and be like, okay, I don't even have to think about this. I put you on out, the data's there. I can show it to my boss. Makes it look like I did the research. So we give our buyers lots of data so they can impress their bosses and make it easy to say, hey, this isn't actually as much a risk as it might feel like. We have a strong data story.
And as we launch new products, so we have pouches, we have puffs, we have toddler formula now. As we launch those new ones and as we launch more pouches, right, we need more shelf space. So it's really to keep sharing those refreshed reports on a regular basis, to take it from pouches, do one for puffs, do one for formula, right? And it's a strategy that works. So we're just using it wherever we can.
Totally spot on. I just want to say you're both brilliant in the approach, right? We heard a couple of things here. One, the conversation around velocity, super critical, right? Dollars per distribution point. It's kind of like your efficiency from a sales standpoint. And I think the other key thing that, we always communicate with new brands is you need to come in with that story and with that data, because it's going to educate the buyer. And just like you said, you're like, it does the hard work for them, right? They can feel smart. They don't need to, be concerned or the lack of trust that would be there if you didn't have any data and you're just kind of selling, a pitch without anything behind it. So I think that's just really good advice for our listeners here. So I think they're going to love this. Last thing I'll leave you with, any final advice you have for any other founders listening to this who might be interested in a journey like this, what advice would you give?
We gotta ask for help a lot.
Yeah.
We were very humble about how little we knew. And we asked for a lot of advice, and then we took it. It was amazing how many people were willing to give us more advice because we took the previous advice. If you don't take their advice, they're disinclined to give you more. But we got hours of free consulting from very high level people in the industry just by asking, just by emailing them, calling them. At the end, we'd say, who else should we talk to? They'd introduce us to other people. We'd have calls with them, and continue to build out this network of advisors. We created an official advisory board as we got people who were extra impactful, gave them a little bit of equity early on, had them on our team, on our side. So really asking for advice, taking it all the time.
Agreed.
Yeah. Anything you'd say?
I mean, for me, I think we've been really, really successful, and people ask, what's the secret to your success?
Right.
And I think part of it is the mission. We have a very noble mission, raising the health of the entire country and starting with babies and our children, right? So being able to articulate that and talk about the mission and talk about what it means to the greater population, the greater good, appeal to their hearts, as because hearts write checks. So for us, it has always been very easy. You can't see this, but I have pictures of 12 babies on my office wall. Because when things get hard, I just look at them because they're our North Star. They're why we do this. They're why we go through all this hard work and take risks. And I'm not really a risk-taking entrepreneur person, but I am a person who wants to help make things better for babies. So that has really worked for us too.
Yeah, I love that. That hearts are what leads, right? And I think that's so true. I'll have to send you my baby picture of my daughter, right? Put on your wall.
Yeah, perfect.
We'll get it over there. Now, I want to ask one last question on a personal level, just because the other day I was having a conversation with another brand who works with family, right? So it was a brother and sister kind of co-founder. Can you share a little bit about your experience? What advice do you have for other founders who are starting with their spouse or starting with a sibling or a cousin? What advice do you have? Yep. We
always joke that if ever we're done with this business, we're going to start up a business coaching couples that are in business together.
There you go. Yep.
Like, sign us up. We need that because it is not easy.
Yep.
A lot more common than you think. We need a lot of
Exactly.
A lot of family businesses. Like, it's a very common thing to do. It makes a lot of sense because my previous business, one of the big failures was my co-founder and I just didn't have that commitment to each other. We shared a vision, but when things got hard, when our personality styles clashed, we didn't have the commitment to each other that was needed to get through it. So I love working with my wife. I get to work with her, best coworker I've ever had. But it is challenging. We have to put a lot of effort into separating work from our family life.
Yeah.
We have some little rules like no talking about work in bed, You're allowed to talk about work in the car on the way to our date night, but once we get to the date, no more.
I love it. Yep. So date night's key. You gotta have date night.
Super important. We have a lot of business meetings. We try to have 2 to 3 meetings a week.
One-on-ones
during work hours, so that we really meet. Otherwise, we're talking about it over the dinner table. We're trying to make decisions at night
with a toddler around.
Right. And so it's lots of time to each other. Just because we're around each other doesn't mean we actually have a lot of structured time together. And then we've just really created a family dynamic at the company where we really encourage people to take time off to be with their families. We had on-site childcare for a while, and do what we can to encourage that, build on our relationship as an asset to the company.
Yep. Well, it's fantastic advice. And I think you're a great kind of role model. Like you said, if you start another business, I think you guys are the proof point that you can make it work extremely well. So thank you, Joe and Serenity. Just such an awesome story. I think that speaks to a lot of hearts of all the parents out there. And I know our fans will definitely take interest in this one. So this has been another episode of NielsenIQ's Founder Series, where we dive deep into the most innovative brands and founders to unpack what truly makes these brands tick. This video is brought to you by NielsenIQ, where we're revolutionizing the CPG industry and democratizing data and analytics for emerging brands. To learn more, check out Byzzer, BYZZER.com. Thank you.